Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Landi explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to the In Such a Time podcast. And Rabbi, you and I today are going to talk about what do we do with artists that we love who offer anti-Semitic or even harshly critical comments about Israel, singling out of Israel in their overall social media or larger comments in the community. What do we do if we are a lover of some of this music and or arts and movies and such? And when do we cut the cord? Do we keep going? How do we deal with the struggle? And obviously, as I'm even expressing it to you, it's a struggle clearly that I'm having.
I hear
And
thee.
so I'm coming to you both as my colleague and my therapist here with this and to ask about this process.
Well, can I start by asking a question?
Yeah.
What do you need music to do for you? Do you need your music to represent something for you, or is it just for the sake of listening and enjoyment? And so what's your starting point with that?
I'm going to come out to you here a little bit of a personal revelation about myself that's not going to surprise you. Um, I'm that type of person where a little thing can be incredibly distracting to me,
I didn't know that.
even though it shouldn't be. If I'm at the movie theater and someone's got one cell phone out shining brightly, it annoys me, it gnaws on me to the way that I can't enjoy the movie anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to articulate my personality here again, which I think you're well familiar. And if I'm listening to a piece of music and I know that that person is a terrible anti-Semite and has said awful things about the Jewish people, then it really is hard for me to let go and just enjoy the music.
I hear you. So that takes out a lot of players these days, I'm assuming for you.
Well, this is my question is at some point you start narrowing your world to such a degree that ultimately there's no one else to listen to, or you have to be very, very careful with this. And the prompt for this conversation is that by the time this podcast comes out, my daughter's going to be preparing to go to Gov Ball.
Mm.
And Gov Ball, for those who don't know, is a 3 day music fest. It was in Governor's Island, now it's in Queens. And it is a festival of sort of all of the, for like young, progressive, people to
Yeah.
go out and listen to their favorite artists. And there are artists that are playing there who I know have been harshly critical in singling out Israel amongst all other
Yeah.
countries, and have said terrible things about Jews as well. And I'm going to send my daughters out into this environment. There's probably going to be a lot of anti-Israel sentiment at the concert. I want my daughters to be safe. I also want them to be prepared, but I also it makes me so upset that I have to deal with this. That this is even a factor that we have to talk about. How am I living in 2026 and I have to warn my daughters who just want to go hear their favorite musicians play at a festival about what they're going to see and hear there. And when chants for death to the IDF begin at this conference, and their first cousins are in the IDF, like how are they going to take that moment? And it kills me that that's something that I have to deal with.
I hear you. It's tragic, and I think it's very heavy. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, that, there's, I think, two kinds of diasporic Jews at the moment. There's the diasporic Jews who are resilient, resistant, are like, whatever it is that you're throwing at me, I'm going to stand with pride and reject whatever the bigotry is. And then there's those who, I mean, this is a historical trend, and there's those who are apologetic, and kind of want to remain a part of the greater people, in our and kind of have to diminish themselves in order to be a part of the greater public. Um, and I've been thinking about this in terms of how I position myself and where I am and who I'm speaking with. And I think that this must be really difficult because I know your daughters, and they're so unapologetically Jewish and Zionist and themselves and lovers of music. And so it's so hard to navigate between the code switching, and should they even have to code switch? And yeah, it's really hard when you want to be a part of something. Like music is supposed to be a unifier.
Mhm.
And when you want to be a part of something that's so unifying and beautiful as a music festival, but you're afraid because your identity is kind of split and it's not clear if you belong in that space.
Absolutely. We both know that one of our lay leaders here at the synagogue is a diehard Dave Matthews Band
Yeah.
fan and belongs to the
Music too.
warehouse, to the to like the club to get tickets, would see multiple Dave Matthews concerts a year, would make it family events to get together with members of extended family and to see Dave Matthews in favorite venues. And Dave Matthews, over the past 2.5 years, has made his condemnation of Israel explicit and give voice to the libel of genocide and of infanticide during the concerts, and has singled out Israel as a unique evil and source of brutality in the world. And this lay leader in our congregation, he stopped going now to Dave Matthews Band concerts, and that's such a significant loss because this person really loves it so much. It's so much a part of their uh, oeuvre that they've been listening to. It's so much of their background, and there's a grieving process that goes on around that, and that's a grieving process that I am well familiar with.
What bands have you had to kind of cut out of your repertoire? I don't mean cut out, but who has been the core part of your music discography
Yeah.
that you no longer feel like you can listen to?
So I grew up a huge Pink Floyd fan.
Mm.
And even worse than that, I loved Roger Waters' solo albums, even like to that
I
degree.
get it.
High School, like the Amused to Death album was so fantastic. And when listening to that album, even in high school, I didn't know why he kept talking about Jews during the album. The Jews are mentioned like 3 or 4 times in different song lyrics. And I don't know why he was so interested in Jews. And then, I mean, my Israeli wife and I bonded over our shared love of Roger Waters' album, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, a classic, crazy, fantastic album that we would talk and say, isn't it amazing that you grew up in Israel, you grew up in Hawaii, and a world away, we were listening to the same album
Yeah.
together and both really resonated with it. And so for me, watching Roger Waters' descent into, I mean, what do you call it this time? Just pure hatred of Jews and the Jewish collective,
Outwardly.
outwardly, has been really, really hard. At the same time, I am lucky in the fact that a lot of people I listen to are older musicians because I'm an older person, and my kids are now in the generation where it is part of the calling card of being part of polite, fashionable, progressive society is to make your revulsion to Israel well known. And so, when Doja Cat says something, or Dua Lipa or Billie Eilish, or Lorde, these are musicians who I don't expect know that much about Israel, but in sort of introducing themselves to their fans and their people, they kind of need to make these days hatred of Israel is part of that the portfolio
Yeah,
that they have to
you want
establish.
to
They're bona
represent
fides,
something, right?
right? Um, so I feel more for them. The thing more for the last point for me, I would say, and this is a bit of a parallel issue, is that I used to like to hear comedians.
Mm.
And soon after October the 7th, Ellen and I went to a comedy club, and the guy started making jokes about October the 7th.
Mm.
And
That's
it
so
was
upsetting
so
and
upsetting.
disturbing.
And not just him saying it, but people around laughing.
Yeah.
It was awful. I have not been to a comedy show since then because I'm worried about what the person's going to say. I guess I could sign up and go to like some of these more like right-wing Jewish comedians who are I know it's going to be safe for that, but like that's again I've narrowed my world to such a degree now that I can't go just hear a comedian because I'm going to even if they don't say anything, I'm going to brace myself the entire time waiting for the Israel jokes and comments to begin.
So, two things. first of all, we're like in some ways we have forced ourselves into insularity. In other ways, it's been forced upon us. Like we have to say what is our Jewish identity worth, and is it a core value, and how do you negotiate, your universalist hat of just being a human in this world,
Yeah.
with the, being a proud Jew.
Yeah.
Um, I I actually have a Pink Floyd story.
Go on.
We have fabric sensitivity at our house, tag sensitivity to certain shirts, and our favorite shirt was the Pink Floyd shirt.
Okay.
And it's one of the only shirts that could be worn always. Like if there's no other clean shirt, this is the shirt that would be worn because it felt right, by one of my children. And my kids go to a Jewish private school. And so I just sent my kid in a Pink Floyd shirt almost every day to school because it was,
Really?
I mean, usually a sweater on top.
Go on.
And no one ever commented.
Yeah.
And I've always felt a little awkward about it, but it was either this shirt or no shirt. And so I chose this shirt. But in all seriousness, he's now outgrown it and everything. It's a better situation. But in all seriousness, I think it's interesting that we want our artists to hold certain values for us, or to at least not be, or at least not condemn the values that are sacred to us. And I think that this also maybe came out in the Jewish world, for instance. There was a famous Jewish artist, Shlomo Carlebach. I can say his name because it's a big story. And it came out that he wasn't always respectful towards women, to say the least.
Yes.
And there was a whole movement to cancel out his music in the Jewish world. Because why should we promote the music of someone who doesn't represent our values? And so, and other people would say, no, but the music speaks for itself. You have to separate the artist from the music. And I'm wondering, is that something that we can ever do? Is that something that we can do specifically now, or dafka, like, or specifically, should we say, no, people who don't represent our values, they don't deserve our listening. They don't deserve to even have any platform in our hearts and our minds, on our radio. So yeah, I'm curious, like, how do you separate the artist from the art?
Sure. I think that there's a difference for me between unscrupulous artists who have engaged in corrosive behavior, and I think that's between an artist that purports hatred towards me and my people and my family specifically. Like Michael Jackson did bad things. Should we separate the art from the artist with Michael Jackson? Like, and Shlomo Carlebach's another example of that. I think it's a difference between like making bad choices, being a bad person, having unscrupulous morals, and fomenting hate against a specific group of people. I would think of it much differently this way. Would an African American feel comfortable listening to a white supremacist's music? Right? I'm guessing probably not, right? I don't want, right. If there is someone who is evoking hatred towards me and towards my larger extended family and is singling out the one Jewish state in the world to a degree that no other country is being criticized, then that's hatred towards me and my people. If you go to a Michael Jackson concert, I guess, or a Shlomo Carlebach event. Yes, I did go to a Michael Jackson concert back in the day. Before all this came out, of course.
So without that knowledge.
Yes, yes. But would I still go to I went to the Michael Jackson Broadway show, right? And residuals, I'm sure, go back to Michael Jackson's family in a way that, funny enough, like I try not to play Pink Floyd songs on Spotify because I don't want the 0.00001 cent to go to Roger Waters now. And that might just be my own, again, craziness here. But you know what I'm saying? I think there's a difference between someone being a bad person and someone specifically hating just me. Is that a selfish thing to say?
I don't want to call you selfish.
No, I'm asking you.
I think I think that there's a little inconsistency there. Like I don't like listening to Michael Jackson music anymore, even though I love the music, but it makes me feel icky. Carlbach music, similarly, like I love those tunes and they're often what's in my head, but I do play it and I do sing it, but it doesn't make me feel good. Um, and I think similarly, like when I hear a Dave Matthews song now, I could groove out to that song, day and night, but it hits so hard
Let,
to know that it's not just that he has political opinions. I'm okay with political opinions and I'm okay with being outspoken in political opinions, but I'm not okay with feeding into certain tropes that are dangerous for Jews.
I want to add something else. If you went to a Michael Jackson concert, Michael Jackson was still alive. Michael Jackson did terrible things, but Michael Jackson did not stand up on the stage and say, "Let me hear it, everyone, for big applause out there for everyone who likes to molest children." And the whole crowd would cheer along, "Yay, molest children," right? That would feel terrible. And yet Dave Matthews, at the concert, will bring out the keffiyeh and do a whole thing
No,
about
no, no, no.
Israel
I don't
and the
agree with you.
shortage of Israel and cheer along.
Well, I think that I don't think we need to compare awful to awful right now. No,
I,
except, but what I'm saying is that certain things are unspoken. And in some ways, that's even scarier for me when we're supporting somebody who has unspoken, insidious flaws.
Mhm.
And we're just like, oh, but they're great. And like, we don't even have to talk about that. In some ways, I'm going to be careful with what I'm saying. Knowing that Dave Matthews just says what he's actually thinking feels in some ways better because I know what I'm dealing with. I'm not dealing with someone who's pretending to not have been engaging in some kind of terrible act. I think that it's a very difficult time. Um, it's a very difficult time in general to be a liberal and to want to identify with that camp and then also be a lover of Israel and have a sense of nuance and live, as a person of the world and also live as a Jew. Like it's hard. It's hard to hold on to all these identities together. It's hard to negotiate it every morning by myself. It's harder to negotiate it as a human living in a greater society that doesn't really want to protect you.
I'm having a hard time. I think it's an informative machloket we're having here, an argument or disagreement. Michael Jackson did not make molestation of children a prime part and message of his concert experience.
He also didn't
You
apologize for it
but you knew that was
publicly.
happening. But if you were, let's say, let me ask you this question: a woman who has gone through sexual abuse and goes to a Karl Bach show, as awful as that might be, and you might ask, why would she go to that show? And he's no longer with us as well. But let's just say in this example, she knows at the very least that he's not going to get up there and say, "Yay, we should all molest women." Yet going to a Dave Matthews concert, it's part of a focal point of the experience. Not only do I know that this is part of who he is, but I know that he is going to gin up the crowd and foment hatred in front of me,
You
and
know,
I'm going to be supporting and paying
you understand,
that.
I don't think that we need to compare one to the other. Like I think that this is not a for I don't think that we need to continue this formulaic discussion because I don't think it's going in anywhere. Like one's better than the other. I agree. When you go to a Dave Matthews concert, when you go to one of these concerts where they are calling
Israel's destruction.
for the destruction of the state of Israel, that is immediately threatening to me as a Jew.
Yes,
Understood. Agreed.
in a way that a Michael Jackson concert is not.
I don't feel a need to bring
You know,
it into
it's
the
so much more
conversation.
specific in this. It's so much more like visceral and present. It's about lack of
No,
safety.
no, no, no. One is about my safety, and the other is about me being supportive of other people who have been um who've had their limits and their boundaries crossed. So one is about me and my own personal experience, and one is being part of the collective. I think you have to I think what one of the conversations that we're having right now is do we see our like is do we protect ourselves? Do we stand up for our values before any other values? Do we stand up for ourselves before anybody else? Or do we do both of those together? Do we
Right.
hold this next to the other? If I'm offended because I'm a Jew or I'm an Israeli or I'm a lover of Israel, and I'm offended because I'm at a concert where somebody's calling for the destruction of the state of Israel, and that put Jews at risk. Am I also going to be offended and stand up um, if an artist is calling for similar um, terrifying rhetoric for another group. So I think that we just have to be, of course, we have to protect ourselves.
But if an artist got up at a concert and said, "We should kill all African Americans," you and I would be equally offended by that. It's part of the show. It's not about the universal particular. It's that they're actually ginning up and fomenting violence right there in front of us. I think that's a big difference, right?
It's
If I went to a concert and someone said, and that the rapper had lyrics and said something to the point of women should be subservient to men and men should feel free to sexually molest any woman that
you
they
mean
want.
90s hip hop.
A lot of that music, yes, that, and I would want my daughters going to that as well. And I've never listened to that music anyway, but I think that would be equally offensive. So let me zero out, 'cause I know that this is something we can go way down this hole if we want. Um, there's a really good show that I hear that's on Apple TV called Pluribus. And my parents love the show, and I got fantastic reviews. And the star is Mark Ruffalo.
Mm.
I have not watched that show because for me, like the cell phone on at the movie theater, Mark Ruffalo's presence would be too much of a distraction to me to enjoy the show. And, and that's a loss on my end, but I have to also admit that, look, I can't feel sorry for myself. It's the deal that I'm making. I have to just move on and say, okay, if I've decided I'm not going to watch Mark Ruffalo because Mark Ruffalo singles out Israel as a uniquely, abhorrent state in the world and deserves to be destroyed, then that's okay. Like, look, I'm not going to watch Sex and the City reruns with Cynthia Nixon either, but not that I was watching that in the first place. But this is a show I'd actually watch. My parents love that show. And for them, the idea that Mark Ruffalo is not so keen on Israel is not really a big deal. We all have our own hierarchy of needs we're playing with.
My issue is that identity politics are so unnuanced and ridiculous, and you can't actually have a conversation about anything. So Dave Matthews and I might agree on a lot of issues, but like we can't actually, I mean, I never had access to Dave Matthews, but we can have that conversation because he represents something and he is now the umbrella of that camp. And I think that is a dangerous, I mean, this is what I come back to over and over again. The only way to combat any of this is to actually have a conversation with someone and to say, what is this thing that you believe? And what is this thing that you're a proponent or an antagonist of? And when I see people who are in the camp, and I don't like calling it camp, but they are representative of the Israel's committing genocide camp, I want to say to them, like, let's have a conversation about actually what's happening. And I want to see what you and I agree on, what facts you're absorbing, what facts I'm absorbing. I bet that we probably want similar things. I bet that you're concerned for the plight of humanity. I bet I'm concerned for the plight of humanity. And like, let's break it down and sit together and figure out how we work it out. But when you come at something with slogans, you are basically saying, I'm not ready to have a conversation and I'm not ready to see you and I'm not ready to see your narrative. And I think that that is such a breakdown in humanity. And that's so scary. Because historically, when big statements are made and people buy on to those narratives, somebody is going to be hurt and someone is going to be put at risk. And currently, I think in America and perhaps all over the world, one of the targets of that is the Jews.
Perhaps.
I
agree with you. I think that
I'm going to be definitive.
No.
One of the targets of that is Jews.
One of the really smart business people of our time, or geniuses of our time, is Taylor Swift. And Taylor Swift, despite pressure from all sides, has made no comments whatsoever on Israel-Palestine. And I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, but I love her for that. I admire her for that, for not falling for the raging mob who are all, demanding that in order to be part of polite society, you have to say terrible things about Israel. She is not, because she knows that she has fans who feel differently about different sides of the political coin. And I think that's very savvy of her. But then it brings that question to me to say, well, then, does that mean what I'm saying? Do I want artists to be apolitical? And haven't artists always been political?
Of course.
Haven't artists always been sort of the prophets and the oracles of the time and able to articulate into words what is the sentiment, what's the zeitgeist in the community?
That's beautiful.
And so I don't want to be on the side of muzzling artists of their views. The hard part for me is, let's say, as opposed to I'm a good CCR, Clearance Clearwater Revival fan, and they recorded an entire,
Wait, who is this again? Say it again.
CCR.
Sure. Go on.
Fortunate Son, Proud Mary.
Yeah, okay.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'm with you now.
Right. They created an entire catalog in the 60s of anti-Vietnam
Right.
sentiment. But that's something that they knew something about. That's part of my issue is that now artists like Dua Lipa are making definitive statements about Israel based on what they've learned that day in TikTok of something that's across the country. And so it's really hard for me. I don't want to tell them as, one a journalist once said to LeBron James, shut up and dribble. Like basically the job of a basketball player, don't sit there and try to tell us, teach us your morals, just do your thing. I don't want to muzzle them. At the other end, I take such umbrage to the absolute narcissism and ignorance of these people who then will say things that will put me and my larger family in danger just because they think that, again, that is their entry card into polite society.
I think that was all very well said.
Yeah. My family growing up would sit together and order Chinese food and watch the Oscars. I would never watch the Oscars now. It's just going to be one diatribe against Israel after another. Like I've completely lost that aspect. Not that I really not really into the Oscars that way anyway, but that was kind of the heyday of when those award shows were big.
We've had this discussion before, and this is, a continued part of that discussion. It would be one thing if artists stood up for all of the plight in the world,
exactly,
all the terrible things in the world.
Yes,
but when it's specifically Israel, and when it's specifically after one of the greatest atrocities that's ever happened to the Jewish people, and that is not to say that it is easy to be Palestinian. That's not to say that what's happened in Gaza is not horrible in so many ways, but to make it like a very clear equation where there's a winner and there's a loser and there's a perpetrator and there's victims. And if you don't subscribe to that, then you lack moral clarity. That is dangerous for us. And it's just I mean, I don't have a lot to say. It's disturbing. And I know that every week, like people have commented to me and, how can you not know that there is anti-Semitism? How can you not experience it? How can every week I like kind of deny it and gaslight myself and then listen. And then I lean further into it.
Yeah.
The more I'm like, no, that's not a problem. The more I know it's a problem. The more I'm addressing it, the more I realize that I'm in it. And you're right. We're in a moment where Jews are it's not a moment. Jews are singled out. Jews are
fashionable.
Yes, it's fashionable and it's historically like pathetic. I mean, I think it's time to get over it. No, it's not time for us to get over it. It's time for
They can't. The infatuation goes on. I think that the writer Dara Horn once made a wonderful point. She said that in the U.S.-Afghanistan war, about 250,000 civilians were killed by the U.S. At no award show did any celebrity get up in a Taliban head wrapping and make a case for the Taliban. To see Javier Bardem wear the keffiyeh and call out, in support of Hamas is so, to me.
Is that what he did in support of Hamas?
Yeah, yes. He has spoken out and said that October the 7th is understandable what Hamas did given their treatment by Israel. That it is something that it should be taken in context, right? That's something to me that is so offensive that I am very much in that particularist mindset.
The first time, and I understand why you're in the particularist mindset. I think that, I spent about 20 years in Israel being in the particularist mindset,
right,
committed to that. And I think that being here in America right now has made me want to open myself up to the rest of the world a little bit. I live in a Jewish bubble and I work in a Jewish bubble and I'm a Jewish professional and I'm raising my kids as very serious Jews. And so sometimes I want to not take that hat off, but I want to just wear a different hat.
Yeah.
But the first time after October 7th that I felt that so acutely that this is not going to go well for us was when I watched the trial in The Hague. And no, but like I felt it. I cried. I watched it and I was like, we are being literally just put out to hang. Like
Yeah.
they're going to hang us. There is no way that the world will ever see this as anything except for how it's being presented.
Right.
And it's so humiliating.
Yeah.
And it's so humiliating, I understand, to be at a concert and to have an artist go out and only share one element of a really terrible story, of a really tragic story, but only say this is the truth, and all other parts of the story disregard it. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Because this group doesn't matter, and this group does.
I'm gonna tell you a story that you're gonna laugh at me
Sure.
of how crazy we can get with this. Because you're speaking of The Hague. So the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is the court that put together a spurious case against Israel Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Karim Khan, who was the justice, was now we know, brought to light that he actually had been sexually abusing one of the staffers there, and brought this to case in order to get it off of his back, and there was no evidence, etc., on the ICC case. One of the major advisors on that case was Amal Clooney, wife of George Clooney.
Yeah.
No, but here's the funny part. I don't know if this shows you how insane I am. You know very well that when you are at Ben Gurion Airport and you're heading towards your gate to leave Ben Gurion Airport, right by the food court, there's a big Nespresso store, and there's a huge wall-to-wall picture of George Clooney holding up a little cup of coffee with like kind of a smirk in his eye. And I'm so insane that I look at that poster and I see him as like, yep, welcome back to the diaspora. Like, you're leaving Israel. Welcome. We're all waiting for you here. Like, now I've gone from ICC to Amal Clooney to George Clooney to this poster. And even in that moment, it registers to me of, oh my goodness, the Goyim hate us.
I don't go around the world thinking that the Goyim hate us.
Just that one perfect poster right in Ben Gurion Airport.
You're saying I don't actually ever want to get into that mind space where I think that
I don't. I don't actually think that. Again, I have a lot of non-Jewish friends, especially from growing up in Hawaii, such who I don't feel this way at all. I do not subscribe to the case as scratch a non-Jew and you'll find an anti-Semite underneath. I don't. I think most people just want to live their lives, and I think that most people, especially those plugged into social media, are under a tidal wave of misinformation about Israel, and some of them, frankly, the younger ones, often don't have the critical thinking in order to actually question what they're being fed. And for that, I don't think that's a hatred. I just think that's a basic ignorance. And I have to be a little bit more understanding of that, as frustrating as that is.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring us back to the music for a second.
Yeah.
So what do you actually do like before? Like what do you actually do in reality with this music? Do you take it out of your house? Do you have a conversation about it? Do we try to be in touch with these artists and change their minds? What is our role in terms of how we listen to this music? And also, I don't want to necessarily cancel out in my own head people who have disagreeing ideas with me. I think that, as you said, art is a form of political expression. So I also want to be engaged with a conversation that is not necessarily my own conversation. So I'm throwing it out there. What do you do with all that?
Well, I think you may not know this, but there was a very public process in which a group of diehard Dave Matthews fans who are Jewish wrote a letter to the band and to management and said, please stop doing this at your concerts. We are large fans of you. We like your music, but the way you are singling us out and holding Israel to a double standard, holding Jews to a double standard, makes us feel not safe at your concerts. And we're asking you to please change what you're doing. And the Dave Matthews Band and management wrote a letter back, basically clearly massaged by a PR firm. Thank you so much for letting us know this. Thank you. We, of course, want to make sure you're welcome at all these events, et cetera, et cetera. Made no public statement, just did this private one to this one group, and then did not change a thing about what they're doing. So as far as like, what do you do with this? You could sit down, you talk to the artist. I think some of these artists, frankly, if the majority of their fans are excited by this hateful rhetoric, they're going to respond.
They don't see it as hateful. They see it as empowerment rhetoric.
They do. Dave Matthews from South Africa probably sees it like the modern iteration of apartheid in South Africa, and that this is the noble thing to do at this time. And so he needs to go on a savior crusade and make his music about that. I don't think that any discussion is going to assuage him of that.
Can I tell you something what's frustrating about this for me?
Yeah.
Is it's not like we're saying that there's a pro and an anti camp. I'm pro-Palestinian.
Of course. Of course, you want the best future for the Palestinian people. You don't believe that Hamas is part of that
I don't
future.
want them to die. I don't want them to be hurt.
No, and we also would say that what happened in Gaza is absolutely miserable and sad, like that all people are made in the image of God.
Israel needs to examine how that war was fought and in what way it was fought. No,
now you're missing me.
No. I'm saying there's two different things.
Yes.
I'm saying every war needs to be examined how it was fought in the way that it was fought.
Yes, back on with me.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Yes. Just saying that the civilian to combatant ratio of what happened in Gaza is actually much better than just about any other war.
I don't think that this is
the
discussion.
But the subscription to that, to saying that, well, then they have to sit down. Israel has to reckon with what they've done in Gaza. People don't say that about,
Well, yes, that's the issue. That's the issue.
Treat it like any other war.
That's the issue.
Like any other war, and then great. Yes, it should be held to the same scrutiny, the same moral uncertitude, right? Of any other war. You can disagree with me on that one.
I do a little bit, and I don't think that we need to. I don't think we need to open that.
That could be our next podcast. It's okay.
But what I do feel is that when an artist does have a platform, and they use it to shine light on an issue that's important for them, and I understand why they do that and what moves them to do that. And I understand, like, if you weren't raised in the Jewish tradition and you weren't raised with the love of Israel and you only were looking at the world through the specific facts that you had, I can understand why that would be a compelling cause for you.
Yes.
But artists also need to understand the responsibility and their words and how it affects and how it challenges and how it makes others unsafe. And I think that's where we are.
I think that if I were going to give advice to artists, I think it would say there are certain things that you can do with your power to make the world a better place. And I think that if you dedicate and do messages about how to fight poverty and disease and homelessness, right, that you could do so much things that can be universally understood and are not wedge issues. And here I think like Taylor Swift, again, is very savvy in this. But I question whether an artist, when they choose wedge issues in order to say who's with me or against me, and that those people who agree with my issues then are going to be most comfortable at my concerts. I'll even take this to a non-Jewish example here. The fact that Bruce Springsteen is on tour right now, on a No Kings tour.
Yeah.
A lot of things Bruce Springsteen says at his concert, I agree with a lot of that. But I openly worry about what it means then for a major artist to go on tour and basically message to half of the country that they're not welcome or they're not the main. I don't think it's good business.
The organizers, though, they're artists with a message.
Have you been to a Bruce Springsteen concert?
No, I haven't, but I know.
It is a revival meeting. It's beautiful. Like, it's a wonderful thing. And it's so much about bringing people together. And I worry now that artists we are in such a partisan moment, and artists who are giving greater weight and emphasis to that partisanship, that worries me, even if I agree with what they're saying.
And I think that they would say, and I think that's a conversation that you say that we have together. When you have a platform, you want to use your platform to be a proponent for good and for the values that you uphold. And so I get that.
Yeah.
I get that need to shine light on the moral infringements of this moment, or what he perceives to be those moral infringements of this moment.
So you asked me what I'm going to do with this. My daughters are going to go to the concert. We're going to monitor their cell phones at all times. Do I buy them pepper spray or not for the concert?
I don't think you can bring that in, but yeah.
Yeah, something like that. We're going to remain really close by. Ask them to really make very careful choices while they're there and what crowds they go into. We have to.
No, I'm making a face because
we are.
I'm making a face.
But I would do that anyway.
Scare me more than specific language, but yeah.
Right. I mean, a band like Kneecap is not playing. This Irish band that calls for death to the IDF and plays all these terrible things. But maybe one last anecdote, then we can go. 2 years ago, my family and I went to Forest Hills to go see the Strokes play.
Yeah.
like the Strokes a lot, right?
Yeah.
The Strokes have been saying terrible things about Israel and just played at Coachella and did this like 5-minute video all about the genocide in Gaza. And then the lead singer went off and made all of these other comments all about Israel. And it's such a confusing thing to me because then the news came out that their Sephardic Jewish guitarist is not going on tour with the band and has left the band. So A, did they not know that he was, and B, was this guitarist totally cool with this Coachella performance and like the movie that all about Gaza that was there? What broke it for him? But like even like if people are being broken up over this, now bands are breaking up over this.
God forbid.
And Strokes are not a bad band. They've
They're
got
a
some
great
good,
band.
some good. And I think that that's a terrible reckoning, a terrible sign about where we are today as a country, that everything is being bifurcated by politics. And maybe, even though we should never say that musicians, artists should be apolitical, maybe they should be choosing their politics wisely around things that unite people and make sure people feel safe.
Okay, I think that we're going to leave that as an unanswered question, and yeah, I gotta keep processing that.
Okay, to be continued. Thank you for helping me process this out and talking with me about this, Rabbi. I
I hope
appreciate
we
it.
can go back to seeing all the wonderful bands we want to see in the future.
How have I? It'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Landi, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.